complex. I thought it was my fault. I'd been going on for years, and I thought I would be blamed. This was several years ago when I came out and shared my story. We're just intimidated, and we are intimidated from sharing. We're threatened to keep quiet.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point there. A lot of people forget. I think people assume, oh, if you come forward, everyone's going to support you and it's going to be such a safe environment. And they forget the example you gave is not uncommon, that abusers often thrive in cultures where this is the norm or allowed or looked past or pushed onward. Another person close to me commented on Facebook today that they went through this at the time in the 70s, and they just moved the abuser to another location. And once again, a culture that says this isn't somehow okay because we're just going to just move this person and allow them to do it in other locations. So I think one thing we forget is, what are the odds that your company has made it clear, your organization, that they're truly supportive of survivors coming forward and have background to prove it? Like, there's a track record here that says, oh, someone came forward, look how they were supported, the person was dealt with quickly. There's not a lot of examples of that for survivors to look at and go, oh, I can feel safe here. This feels supported.
And that's a problem. We need to make we need to make it safe to tell. It's not exactly a resume builder now, is it? To be a survivor of child sexual abuse, to be a survivor of rape and sexual harassment. We have to make it safe to tell. Why? I mean, I'm not going to get into, other people saying that it's happened and it happened. More often than not, 99.9% of the time, if someone is being accused of this, it's happening. It is happening. I mean, my family, when I came out to them and told them and sought their support, they listened, and they could see the pain, and they listened to me.
Well, and that's such an important pivotal part, is the fact that for people to listen, for people to be compassionate, and instead of trying to figure it out so it doesn't happen to them, be present for the survivor, right? Because we know what happens in the media right now. People do, well, if that was me, well, I would do this differently. I would do that differently. That's not helping the survivor. There's nothing that's going to enable them to go in a time machine and change what happened that day. So you drilling deep with, well, why this, why that? That's not compassion. That's you creating a self-defense mechanism so you think you don't ever have to deal with this.
It's unconscious bullying. And when they say statements like that, well, they're shocked. They're shocked to hear the news. So they don't know what to say. So it's a defensive mechanism for them. But how we react is so important so that we don't re-victimize.
Yes, and that's so important here. And I know, Peggy, you have shared also, right, on the post that we put out there today that, hey, this is something that happened years ago, but this culture is still present today. So, Peggy, you see this case happening, you said, it riles up all these feelings and these emotions when you see these cases happening publicly. Can you share a little more on, even whether it happened 20 years, 30 years ago, helping people understand that our culture is still in a place where this is happening, and there's reasons for that?
Absolutely. And this is, I work with women leaders, and so often we hear these stories, and I certainly have lived through it. I've lived through it, being in positions of starting from a receptionist, being hit on, and it worse, just being sexually molested in a closet in a corporate office. And having gone to, I'm pretty vocal, and I went to leader and wasn't supported there. And even as I moved up rank, not only experienced it, but also saw it from a perspective, from a culture. And we are living in that culture right now. Rena, you're so right. It is, how do we give women and men who have gone through this experience the power to come forth, the sense that they'll be heard, when in reality we see first Weinstein for sure being out there, and he's been powerful. People knew about it. This is what I call it, that there were people around that knew. this was happening. And yet they knew when a woman was walking in like the sacrificial lamb. And the issue is, it was more important for them to hold on to their positions, their jobs, than to protect this person that they knew was about to be the sacrificial lamb. We do this again on politics. We've had on both sides of the house presidents that were known. It came up, and yet for us as a country, we allowed that to be. There wasn't any sense of this is wrong. So you're now talking about a woman or a man who is going through a situation, being traumatized in that moment, being told by that power person, saying your career is going to be ruined. I will destroy you. That's what somebody told me. I will destroy you. You will never work with again. You will never succeed. Those are the words that were told to me. And those are the words that are told to women, because oftentimes the women that are going into in a work environment, they're looking for an opportunity. They're looking to grow. These actresses wanted to be aspirational. They thought it was an opportunity. That this is a power broker that can make or break their career in their perspective, right?
Right. And what's amazing in this case is there's an audio recording. There was a sting setup that was done, and a model went in to meet with him, and you get the recording. They've released it. You can hear it. And he says at points, you'll never see me again. You'll never talk to me again. And then within 1 second, no, come on in. Just come forward. He keeps playing this devil angel role that is creepy beyond. And when you hear it, I think if people listen to it, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this sounds so desperate and yet power driven. And you hear the disgustingness of this. And I think it's important for people to understand that's the play at hand here. It's, look how powerful I am, but I'm a good person, but I'll be evil to you if you don't do this, but I'm a good person. It's so sick and twisted. And people forget, well, what if you are in a situation where you think this is my one chance in life to follow my dream and my gifts? Is this what I have to do that? And it becomes mentally abusive and confusing. And it causes this haze of being able to make a good decision out of fear and everything that's taking place. And you forget, what if you were that model in that situation? And you brought up, Pegeen, earlier, especially if you're somebody who the system has already given you a lack of self-confidence or a lack of power. Now this abuser just feeds off that, and they use that. Right. And that's not an excuse to ever say, well, you should have had more power, more self-confidence. No, that's how sick the abuser is, to feed off of it.
Well, and they're using it right now so let's just be clear, okay? These are very evil men that use this power. No matter what good they've done in the world, no matter how much they've donated for this, they are still evil who have taken upon destroying the lives of women. Now, here's one of the challenges is, so on the one hand, the companies and organizations and even the media, we want more women in leadership positions. We want more women to be seen on stage. We want all this, but the organizational structures, our own culture says, but you might have to pay the price. You might have to pay the price. Work hard and pay the price. For women, and this is where women will keep quiet. For women, there's a perspective, is that the price? Is that the price? And the truth of the matter is, hell no. But we have to talk about this and say we as a culture here and around the world need to be able to be the voice. And Rena, I acknowledge you so much for your sharing of your story. I know how courageous it takes. I certainly know for myself, I first wrote about my story back in 1996 when I wrote For All Our Daughters and Mentoring Girls. And it was really hard, because that thought of, even though it's been years, what would they think of me? And for those of you that have never been in that situation, you have no idea what you will do until you're in that situation.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Pegeen, that's the key part that people want to think, I would know what I do. And what that is that's this arrogance, egotistical, I would do everything right in life. And so if I was in that moment, I would do it right. And we want to believe that arrogant, egotistical naivety because we think it makes us safer. It subconsciously makes us safer. If I can believe I wouldn't have done what that person did, then this couldn't happen to me. Therefore, let's blame the person this happened to because then it will never happen to me. It's known that on a subconscious level, this shows up in juries. That if they blame the victim for making a choice that led to the perpetrator's actions, then the jury can feel safer in the world because they can think, see, this won't happen to me because I won't make those choices. It's an evil, evil self-defense mechanism that does incredible harm to survivors around the world, survivors and thrivers. And Rena, I think you were about to speak in there. And
well, I was going to say something like, I'm often asked, why didn't you stop them? Why didn't you tell, whether it was the rape, the sexual abuse, or harassment? But that implies that I'm responsible for stopping that crime. And I'm not. I'm the victim here. But let's put it this way. If you were held up at gunpoint, well, why didn't you stop them from holding you up? I mean, think about it. Are you responsible for being held up by gunpoint? No. The perpetrator is. And Pegeen said something, and this is going to be very controversial, but we've put a man in the White House knowing of his sexual aggressions. Isn't that giving the country permission to be just the same? Isn't it? I mean, think about it. If we don't stop these men in power, so we have to make telling safe.
We
That's
absolutely
the
have to
bottom
make
line.
telling safe. And I think Pegeen makes a good point that there's a history of this in our country, of both political parties, of having people in their party who are known for being abusive, controlling, or predatory, and people looking the other way. And now we're seeing it in Hollywood. It's been in corporate America forever, as both of you are attesting to, and many others have. And I think another important discussion is people say, well, why didn't others come forward who knew what was happening? And I think people forget a really important point that is difficult to discuss, also considered controversial, because everybody wants to say those people are equally at wrong, which is a very dangerous move, because we just said the survivor was afraid because of all the power the abuser had. We also seem to forget that the bystanders might be equally afraid because of all the power the abuser has.
Absolutely.
So yes, there could have been a lot of people in Hollywood who knew about this, and every single one of them feared coming forward, feared what would happen to them, feared how they would be destroyed by this person. People who abuse power, that's what they live off of. So yes, we need to talk about why didn't more people come forward, and how do we empower people to come forward? How do we give people a skill set to intervene when you see, as you said earlier, the lamb being thrown forward to everyone, to the abuser, and nobody saying anything? We need to talk about creating cultural environments where you can feel safe to intervene. So the survivor can feel safe to come forward, and the person who sees something wrong can feel safe to intervene, to come forward and try to stop it before it ever happens. One of the mistakes we can make in this case is saying all those people who didn't come forward, they're the problem. Instead of saying, nope, how did society not make those people feel safe coming forward? Maybe they were very bothered about this, but they equally were afraid for themselves. How do we change the corporate culture, the organizational culture, so that's not happening for anyone?
And Mike, the other piece that I think is really, really important to discuss is how to prepare people that may find themselves going into this situation, may find themselves confronted with this. How do we provide them and prepare them and train them to know what to be looking for, to know what the signs are, to feel power in that moment, to feel powerful, to be able to do things that are so out of their normal norm. And you and I both have worked with the military. I've done scenarios so that people can be prepared before they're going into situations. We don't do a great job at all of preparing people for those negative situations that they may encounter in their life. We don't give them the tools, the knowledge, the practice, the confidence to know what to do. And parents, mentors, our associates, even those people who are bystanders that know, can give people techniques to be prepared for this situation, to show up. It was really interesting. At one of the people that had been incredibly abusive to me was when I was a receptionist at a company, a corporation. My father has also worked in the corporation, and this man was just disgusting to me and showing up. And my father happened to show up to say hello to me and overheard what this guy was doing to me. This is his daughter. This is a man he had worked with for 30 years. And I knew the value that my dad had about this guy, how he talked about him and raved about him. But in that moment, my father definitely went right to the president and said, this is non-acceptable, and he slugged the guy. Now, that is not usually going to come across, but my dad had no clue, and nor did his friends have any clue that this guy was actually doing what he was doing. He understood that there was banter in a bar, but it was not, he just never, ever, it never dawned on him that this could actually happen. And so that's prep work. That's being able to say, and I'm going to tell all the dads and the grandfathers, if you hear the language, if you hear someone speaking that way around you on the golf course, out there, you need to speak up. You need to really be courageous and say, that is so disgusting and inappropriate behavior. And tell it what it is. That's sexual harassment. That is disgusting. And to really use the peer pressure. I don't think that we teach people enough about that. The second thing is that, I tell all parents, please take yourself to a women defense class. Take the course, hear about it, understand some of the confidence you gain from it, and the awareness of the little, God, we've got to be teaching about the little intuition, that little hair on the back of your neck that says something is wrong. Danger, danger, danger.
Well, and that's always an interesting one, because I appreciate you sharing that, Peggy. In this line of work, survivors and experts who work on trying to support survivors, there is a definite controversy, disagreement amongst people on which way we go about that. And the reason why is, for most of our time of history, the focus has been how not to be raped. It has not been on how to transform culture, on creating a culture where rape doesn't happen in the first place. It's how not to get raped. And so what happens is, when we focus on how not to get harassed, when we focus on how not to get raped, when it happens, sadly, people blame the survivor for not using the skill sets that are out there to supposedly stop it from ever happening in the first place, or prevention. So I think an important discussion is to say, hey, know these resources are out there if you want to learn them for self-defense, for being able to step in at that moment. But know that if you don't, that still in no way implies that you're responsible because you didn't utilize these tools for what happened to you. Where we can really focus is on what you just said there, Peggy, that takes no focus on the survivor and what they did, is to say, those of us seeing the signals of what's being set up around the survivor, those of us from the outside who are not the ones being set up to be abused or being abused, for us to step in and have the skill set to do that. That is really key, because if we were all doing that, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world can't get away with this because we're calling them out. I point this out when I'm working with, yesterday I was with a military installation, and I said, look, we did this very effectively in a matter of a few years in the 1980s with a very similar crime. And it was a sexual violent crime that we changed how we viewed it. And that was child molestation. If you take from early 80s and before, 70s, 60s, 50s, you didn't know if a molester was in your neighborhood. There was nobody giving you warnings. What happened is somebody would go, you know what, stay away from the house on the corner, that brick house, the creepy person. And what was sad is that person might not have been a predator, That could have been a mental health issue, but people tagged them as a house to stay away from. That's all there was. You didn't know if there was truth to it, no truth to it. Today, if a child molester is moving in a neighborhood, everyone's notified. It is made sure that you are made safe. What happened? In the late 80s, early 90s, we saw a national case where the father came forward, ended up with his own TV show to help end crime, find criminals, that made everyone aware of how severe and dangerous this issue is. And the world said, no longer, we're going to protect our children. And in a matter of years, we shifted the laws, everything on how we treated child molestation because our country cared enough to do something. And that's what we need to get to. When is our country going to care enough to end sexual violence from the harassment level to the assault level, which means at the corporate level, the organization level, association level, to where if we're even hearing signs that something is happening in our company, we step up. We know what to do. We have a skill set on how to do it. Everyone in the company's trained how to do it, and we team up and we make a difference. That's cultural transformation. That's where we need to get so that all this onus is not on these survivors.
Mike, I have to jump in here. I have a nephew who's a foreman in construction, and he deals with this language and this talk all the time from the people who work, the men who work under him. It starts with the men. It's not, he says, Rena, it's disgusting, the things I hear. It's not locker room talk. It is harassment. It is abusive. And he tries to educate them and help, and he's trying to get things changed in his, local atmosphere at his company. It starts with the men. We blame it on the victim. We put all the responsibility on the victim, but we have to go after and educate the men that are not doing this on how they can help even more and empower them even more on how they can help, because he feels helpless at work. He's 20 men having this locker room, nasty, disgusting conversation, and he's one man trying to stop it. So
yes,
we need to empower them.
Yeah, and the key there is to have such good training that everybody in the room is on the same page that scares the predator, right? So if we have 100 people in a room, men, women, leaders, people of power, because we do have to be clear here. There are people of all genders who have been abusive. We want to be careful of the person out there listening right now going, hey, I've been hurt or abused by somebody who didn't identify as a man, and feeling like, do I not count here? No, this happens by all people, to all people. So we need everybody in the room with a phenomenal training experience that the room says as a group, yes, we need to make this transformation. Yes, I'm committed to making this transformation. And you can see the passion of the room, the excitement of the room, and the predatorial people in that room who abuse power see the shift, the wave changing to the point where they might even go, oh, I might have to change my ways to do what I do, or maybe I can't do what I do here, right? Because they see there's such a change of shift, they cannot operate that way anymore. Now, some people listening could go, well, wouldn't they just think of other ways to operate? Well, that's just it. If there's 1 out of 100 doing that, and 99 are now all on the same page, they're watching for the shift. They're watching for anything because they have the right why. They have the right reason for caring and wanting to make a difference, and they have the skill set to do it. So you have everything you need, and you have a team approach to ending this. That's going to be the critical component. You can't just tell people this is bad. They don't just change their behavior because they think something's bad. They need to believe they have a personal reason to get involved, 1, and 2, a skill set to do it. That's how they build confidence. And then if you have a team environment, you have the almighty combination to shift everything so that these perpetrators cannot do this anywhere in that culture in any way that will be supported or looked or turn the other, turn the cheek from.
Well, Mike, I just want to share something because I think that you bring in both of you are bringing such great points, because I think that if we look at the shift and change of culture from child pornography, child molestation, there was a call to action. So let me just go over some of the things that you just said, which is 1, that has to be a media frenzy, a media protagonist, somebody who is going to speak to the world and say, this is happening, here are the people, and it's a constant message, which is what happened with child abduction and is that it was a constant message. It was always in the media. He was always talking about it. The second thing is that those of us who are in the field, those of us who have experienced it, those of us that have worked through our own issues, is to do what we're doing now, speaking up, talking about it, letting people know that it's there. The third thing is, from a judicial piece, is to prosecute and to create an environment where you will be disgraced. Peer pressure is powerful. And for our leaders, the Weinsteins, the Trumps, the Clintons, the peer pressure has not reached a point where it's being said, no, this is totally disgusting and totally unacceptable. And you're not going to be rewarded. You're going to, not at all. And that has to really come, you're going to be prosecuted. It's going to come forth, and it's important. And then the fourth thing is for our survivors and thrivers to have their days in court, to have their messages heard, to have them coverage, and to educate them, the community. The fifth one is to educate the community at large that this was done to them. And it was done to you because you lived in a society that said, if you speak up, whether you know that this is about to happen or whether you have lived through it, you have to have the courage. And those are the 5 points that I think are critically important to transform.
I'm thrilled you shared those, because so many of those are not happening, right? If you look at the justice system, how many times in the past 2 years, whether it be a sexual assault case or some form of sexual violence, did the judge almost seem to take pity on the perpetrator, the predator, don't want to ruin their life, don't want this one incident to, forgetting what was done to the survivor, the thriver, and how it's impacted their life. And then the message out there is, yes, this is awful to a point. That's what that says. That says this is awful to a point, because we don't want to hurt too much the predator who did this, which means bad, but to a point, which is an incredibly horrible message. And then survivors start questioning, is this worth it? Is this worth coming forward to go through all of that, to watch this person be treated like this, and for me not to get closure, for my voice not to be heard in the courtroom? It becomes another factor that influences whether people come forward, because of what they've already seen happen in the past in our judicial system, in our court system, in our court of opinion, public opinion, in the political system. It's really important that we show survivors they will be supported all the way through every step of every process.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's re-victimizing people. It's re-victimizing, and we're victim blaming. How am I responsible for what happened to me at 4 or going to work? Where work should be a safe place. Work should be a safe place. We spend a lot of our awake time at work, and it should be.
That's right. And the other part about that is, one, Rena and Peggy, and I think we want to address this, that having your voices, you as survivors, is what we need to be having more of a discussion. You know what we need less of? The drama of the celebrity Hollywood political environment as the focus of this discussion.
I agree.
Instead, let's put more and more survivors in front of the news every day while this case is going on. Because the more people realize how many people in their lives have experienced this, the more they go, what? And the more they go, what? There's an awakening. Like, I had no clue that was happening this much. Remember when the Stanford case happened? How many people were coming forward going, when I experienced it, and people were going, what? When the person created the Twitter feed that was saying this happened to me, and the millions that responded, right? Or during the Bill O'Reilly situation, the millions that responded. We need survivors front and center so that people can see the survivor. And I don't mean forced front and center. I mean survivors who are comfortable and are in a safe space to come front and center, so we can realize, let's not make this about Harvey Weinstein. Let's make this about the culture that allowed Harvey Weinstein to do this in companies and society. To
prosper. You know, Mike, I've been doing some research. I'm going to be doing a TEDx talk soon, but I found that, going back to the child abuse and it's sexual harassment, I mean, there's millions and millions of cases. Just in the United States, they estimate there's 126 million survivors of child sexual abuse alone. That's almost 40% of our population. Think about our population that is in the workforce being sexually harassed. You know, every time I share my story, I have men and women, you know, come up to me and share their story. We have to make telling safe. And when someone comes to you and trusts you enough to share this secret, whether it's child abuse, rape, sexual harassment, they need your support, not your judgment. What I'm telling people is listen, just shut up and listen. Let them speak without interruption or judgment. And if you don't know where to encourage them to seek help, find out with them. You know, go on that journey with them to find out, because that'll empower you too as the listener. I think it's so important, just so important.
It's critically important. And don't try to fix them or the situation.
Oh, you can't.
That's one of the biggest mistakes we all make. And not saying that I never made that mistake either, that we can all make, is to think, I'm going to fix this for you. Don't take away their choice. That's what you're doing when you do that. When you step in and say, I'm going to fix this, or you act like, well, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, you're forgetting who has to make the choices here, because someone just took away their choices. Don't now you take away their choices of letting them decide what happens next, what they want to do next. That can be a mistake a loved one can do. Well, you need to do this, you need to do that. Whoa.
They don't need to do anything.
That's right. This is my life, my choice.
But we need to find out what our choices are to get help, get healed, get happy. And I started that with my No More Shame campaign, to put resources there for people to call, to check out, go to websites. You know, I am tired of being ashamed of a crime that I did not commit. And I want to share that with other survivors. We are sentenced to a lifetime of shame because we're threatened to remain silent. And we are victimized, re-victimized over and over when we're not allowed to speak our truth. And when we speak our truth, Mike, you know this, and Pegeen, you know this as well. Speaking our truth is what will fix us. Speaking our truth is what will help us heal.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, so many survivors, right, bring up, that's what allows them to really free themselves.
Absolutely.
To speak those words. And for some people, that's journaling. For some people, that doesn't mean going out in front of the public, but for some way of being able to speak their words to themselves.
I think that is a really important piece that you just said, Mike. It's got to be coming from that who it happened to is ready. You know, we're all speakers, and know from our perspective, you can't share your story until you handled all the crap that was inside of you and dealing with the pain that you already had. You've got to be prepared within, and it takes time. It really takes time. But I think that one of the biggest pieces is, and I'm grateful that you're doing this segment, I really am, is that for people to know, those who are survivors and those who have not spoken up and those who are dealing with it right now, is that there is another side. There's the side as you go and heal. There's the side as you discover your own sense of love for yourself and your sense of power. There is a place where you live life fully. You live life well. And no one will ever be able to take that away as you grow and learn that for yourself. It is a painful, horrible experience. Horrible.
It's torture.
And it is, you will, as you go through the experiences, as you go through your own growth, as you go through your own healing, however that looks for you, there is another side which allows you to be at the place where Rena is, the place where I am, where we could share our stories, where we could say this because it doesn't define who we are. It was an experience. I will never let anybody else define who I am. I define it by being able to share my story. And I want everybody listening to this, every parent, every survivor, every supporter. This is not okay. And as we work through this, we, the survivors, will be okay. But we also know that people like Rena, myself, and all those who are willing to speak up, it is important that we share our story. It is important that we speak up. It's important that people, if it happened to you, if it happened to you, yes, it happened to me. But I'm speaking up because I honestly don't want it to happen to anybody else.
Well, and I think that's such a great way for us to wrap this up, for everyone to think, to be reminded that this is not okay ever under any circumstances, and to know that if this has happened to you, any sexual violence has happened to you, your strength, the courage you have inside you, it's there. It is absolutely there. And that gives you the ability to move forward and live an amazing life, a sensational life. And I'm so glad the two of you described the language of horrible and traumatic, and because we need to have those words in there to understand. We're not saying just because your courage and your strength, it doesn't mean it's going to be an easy journey, but it's going to be a journey that when you get to where you two are, as you two just described, can be so important to being able to thrive and live your life. So I want to thank you two both so much. It's the reason we did Voices of Courage 12 years ago, to have a book where 12 survivors could share their journey and show you where they are now, not just the tragedy. TV wants to show you all the tragedy. Movies want to show you all the tragedy. What they don't show is, where is the survivor 12 years later, 20 years later? How are they thriving in their lives? How has their courage and their strength led to where they are today? It's why we give the book for free. If you're watching this and you're thinking, how do I learn more about that? It's free. Nobody's getting it out of you. Go into Voices of Courage and downloading it at datesafeproject.org, completely free resource. If you want to talk with a counselor, use RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, RAIN.org. They have an 800 number on there you can call. These resources are there for you, not because you need to or you should use them, because you deserve. You deserve to be able to talk with someone. You deserve to be able to speak up and to be heard and to be honored. I want to thank you, Rena and Pegeen, for joining me. For everybody who's been watching us and who may share this on Facebook so others can learn. I hope if you're watching this, you are sharing it so others can learn so much about this, because Rena and Pegeen, your brilliance, your power, your courage, your strength has just shined throughout this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, Pegeen.
Bye, Rena. Love you.
You too, sweetheart. Bye.
Bye-bye. Both of you. You're so amazing.
Love you too, Michael.
Thank you. Love you.